Great, thanks, Rick. I'm Megan Hughes. I'm really happy to be here. I work at Stillwater Counseling and Pain Management Clinic. That's my clinic, and I've been doing this work in the area of chronic pain, chronic illness for about 15 years or so. I've got research in the area. I find it all really fascinating, and I'm glad to be here to present some of my ideas today. We'll be looking at the neuroplasticity of central sensitization. This is part one, because there's so much information I couldn't fit it in, so I'll have part two in July. This is about what is happening in the brain that creates sensitization and what we can do. Actually, the doing part is important. What do we do to start to desensitize and start to reclaim the body? I often find that in lectures and seminars, there's a lot of information on the idea of what it is. This is kind of a little bit only on what to do about it. So today I really want to focus on what to do. So now this is my first time doing a video like this in Zoom. So I'm going to be getting to know how to do this as we go. I wanted to just say about questions and answers. What I like to do is have questions throughout because I'm presenting ideas that maybe take a little bit of unpacking. So I will present an idea and then say, are there any questions about this? And if you have a question, please present it. I won't have time for every question every time because we do have to sort of keep rolling along, but I will try to get to most of the questions. And if there's time at the end, I'll sort of open it up and have some more questions at the end as well. So as usual, with these kinds of groups, people may be talking about themselves and their own experiences. So we do need to have group rules, which are we respect what anyone else says. We're not going to interrupt. We're going to stay confidential. So everything that anyone says here that's personal simply doesn't leave. And I do encourage you not to share your personal information because there are 136 people here. So speaking in generalities is always a good idea. Okay, let's carry on. Good. I'm getting to know. There we go. Okay, the first slide, I just wanted to quickly go over what the rules of neuroplasticity are, because this is going to be explaining what's happening as we go along. You guys may have heard this already. I'm not going to go through every single one of these. The big ones are use it or lose it. So I like to think about the high school French that I learned, and that I just don't have that anymore. And the reason for that is because I just don't use it. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not there. It means that it's been relegated to being not relevant in my life. But if someone starts speaking French to me, I'll go, yeah, I think I remember this, and it might come back, but I haven't used it. Now, the second one, use it and improve it, or fire together, wire together. That's pretty standard as well. So what we think of most and what we do most becomes most wired in our brains. And that is very important for our exercises that we're going to be doing. Now, the rest of these are really important when it comes to changing neuroplasticity. Specificity, repetition, I really, really want to stress that. All of these exercises are really helpful, and they're going to be more helpful the more you use them. So as much as you can every day, use these, and they're not really hard work exercises. They're more sort of looking at things differently exercises. Intensity matters, of course, things that we remember even just throughout the day. We don't remember a lot of the mundane stuff, but we remember the intense things. Those are the things that really create an effect. Time, so frequency and duration matter. Salience means how relevant is it to me? If I'm doing a lecture on mortgage changes over the last 30 years, sorry if anyone's really into mortgages out there, but you can understand how a lot of that information is just kind of going to go in one and out the other. But I'm doing this lecture, and this is relevant to you guys, so hopefully you're going to really take it in. That's salience. Age, of course, the older we get, the harder it is. We just need more repetition. That's all. And more sort of creative ways of inducing that neuroplastic change. Transference is a good thing. It means if we learn it in one context, we can transfer it to another. Interference is like somebody tells me their phone number and then there's a bee buzzing around my head. I'm not going to remember the phone number. So this is just information for you to use at your own benefit when you're starting to use these kinds of strategies. I'm going to turn the page. Now I see 3 questions. Let me just double check here. That's true. Thank you, anonymous attendee. If it's being shared on YouTube, nothing will be confidential. Absolutely. That's hugely important. Don't share your personal information. Will the slide deck be sent out to participants? That's a good question for Rick to answer. And will we have the slide sent to us? Okay, so the same question. I'll let Rick mull that one over. And yes,
Bruno,
okay.
Bruno always sends the slide decks if the presenters are okay with sharing.
Perfect. Thank you, Rick. Okay, so now we're looking at the foundations here. Now, this is a little visual that I put together to try to explain how central sensitization is a multifactorial condition. Now, we start here on the left with this lovely pastel powder blue nervous system. It's operating just fine. It's coping and it's activated and it's fine. So we start sort of at the beginning here. Now, the factors that really seem to make a big difference in the development later of sensitization is, we'll start with temperament. Now, I have a YouTube channel and I have one video on there about what is central sensitization, because I get asked that a lot. The next one is being edited right now, and it's on temperament, because I have always found that the people that I see, now I can't say everyone with sensitization, but everyone that I see is a sensitive person, and there is a connection there. And so that video will be going over the detail of that. So what this means, temperament, is if you're a sensitive person, that's the connection. Sensitivity to begin with. That means you are a person who is compassionate. You're a person who has empathy for others. You're a person who is careful about making decisions. Perhaps you're more of an introvert than an extrovert. The classic temperament is a sensitive person, like you've heard of the HSP label, highly sensitive person. That's kind of out there and it's a very popular thing. So highly sensitive people tend to be the ones who hesitate before joining in something. They hesitate, they think about it, they feel it through, they check it out, and then they join. That's a hallmark. So this temperament sort of sets the stage for the nervous system to be very responsive from the very beginning. Then we add the general health of the person. When you're a child, was there lots of junk food? Was there missed meals? Was there some health issues anyway? Or absolutely beautiful, lots of veggies and really healthy stuff. That makes a difference. I see one. Thank you. The next one here is cognitive style. So, whoops, sorry. Cognitive style is, that's how do you think in general? And I'll give you an example of that. If you or your family growing up were fairly negative, if you know people who jump to the worst conclusion, I know someone, a friend in my friend group, and we joke that he's Eeyore because he's always thinking about the worst case. He happens to have a lot of anxiety and a lot of pain. So there's a connection there. So cognitive style is, what is the style of your thinking and how does that affect your nervous system? And then coping behaviors are, how did you learn how to cope with stress? Did you learn how to, or did you learn to ignore it all and not talk about it? Did you learn to have, lots of conflict about it? Did you learn to drink? Did you learn to do other things dealing with stress? There's lots of different coping behaviors. Positive ones, I talk about it. I, keep my body healthy. I meditate, I try to laugh a lot. There's lots of different coping behaviors. So we look at this first level here. We've got this as internal factors. And we start off at the beginning of our journey here, feeling okay. Then we go along over time. And we say there are external factors that work on our nervous systems as well. There are life stressors. We can't get away from that. Everybody has them. There are losses. There are traumas. There are, of course, illnesses like COVID, and there's exposure to toxins. So we can imagine that a person whose life has been, they are a sensitive person, meaning they're very responsive to the environment. They take things in deeply. They feel things deeply. And perhaps they're in a family that has high conflict. Perhaps they're in a family where a main person has passed away suddenly. Perhaps they got, moved into foster care, or their family moved a lot. There's lots of different kinds of stresses that act on a little body. And then they get pneumonia, or they get mono, or something. And all of these things add up. Now, the load that we bear on our nervous systems is called allostatic load. So what we see here over time is that a person holds the stress and the brain adapts to holding that stress. And they carry on in their lives with all of this background stuff, and they think, well, I don't know any different, so I guess that's normal. So here we have the yellow, which is sort of a primed nervous system. It's functioning, it's coping, but there's activation there. So we call this prolonged central nervous system activation, and there are strains now on the body. It leads to increased inflammation, increased cortisol levels, decreased immune functioning, and increased vagus activation. So now we see perhaps a teenager, perhaps somebody in their 20s, and maybe they start to have headaches. Maybe they start to have gut problems, but they're just going to carry on. They're going to say, no, I got this, and they're going to go on about life. And mostly they can. Then we get a triggering event. And for a lot of folks, it was COVID. I see people where the triggering event a lot of times is some kind of car accident or some kind of loss in the family, perhaps loss of a job, a divorce, some kind of conflict. There's a triggering event that is a tipping point for the central nervous system. It can't cope with that amount of stress anymore. And the impact of holding all that stress just takes its toll. And then we move into this overload and this dysregulation. And the symptoms, as you know, are autoimmune disorders, fatigue, headaches, multiple sensitivities, digestive issues, anxiety, pain, depression, and more. So this is the over time. It usually takes, a whole childhood, although I do see children now with central sensitization. So it really depends on each person. Now I do see a couple of new questions here. Is there a connection between sensitivity and giftedness? Oh, well, I don't know. That's sort of outside of the purview of this particular talk. I would think that giftedness is a different thing because that has to do with brain centers. And I would imagine that there are some gifted people who are kind of insensitive. I'm not sure. That's an interesting topic for research. Your slide says increased vagus, isn't vagus nerve linked to parasympathetic nervous system activation helpful? Did I get it upside down? Maybe I did. Increased vagus activation is yes, good for you. Decreased is when things go wonky. Thank you for that. Okay, so the next one, I'll have to just change that one. There it is. Okay, so here are the people that I see, and I just put this out there to you to just sort of sit with and say, do I fit this? A typical demographic that I see for sensitization is right in the prime adult years, although as I say, I do see younger people, and of course older people, mostly right in those prime adult years. Educated, professional, ambitious, articulate. I usually see people that are helpers and doers, And what I mean by this is, yeah, I see, thumbs up. People who are the one that their friends call on when they need help. People who will add to their load if it means helping other. Lots of thumbs up. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So helpers who kind of put themselves last. And this goes down to that sort of culture of poor self-care. Particularly for women, I have found there's often a culture of everyone's needs come first. I'm okay. I'll just suck it up. It's easier if I do it, right? All of that stuff that means self-care comes last. Now, the doer piece, that will come up again later. I do find that one of the biggest shifts that a client needs to make is shifting from a self-image that revolves around getting her done, right? Around accomplishment and achievement and effectiveness and competence and capability. And their lives and their sense of self revolve around that. And they try to push through and problem solve this kind of condition. And so there's a lot of work that's done to try to figure out this condition. But it doesn't work like that, right? The more you push through, the harder it gets. So shifting from doing to not doing is a big one for people. I see thumbs up. Okay. So then we've got the sensitive temperament, we've got the stresses, losses, traumas, and the activating event. Okay, this is resonating with people. So what do we do about it? That's where we're getting to today. The treatment. And I wanted to just lay this out here because it's important to know it's a multifactorial approach that takes time. Because it was multifactorial over time, that causes this kind of dysregulation. So I've got a list there of the general things that we're trying to accomplish here: calming the central nervous system. And there's the basic ones: meditation, mindfulness, hypnosis, and visualization. I'll come back to that in a bit. Engaging neuroplasticity to reclaim a calm and healthy central nervous system default. We're going to talk about that. There's exercises to do. Desensitizing trauma is a big one. And I tend to start with that one. I tend to start with the top, with calming and desensitizing trauma in parallel at the same time, because what that does is it reduces all of that background noise in the nervous system, that it just keeps everything escalated and hypervigilant. And yeah, good job. I'm glad you like that. And then it teaching calming sort of is its double whammy at the same time. So neutralizing triggers, very important. Changing coping styles, very important. It takes time to make those changes. Changing cognitive style also takes time. Dealing with losses. Now, there are a lot of griefs and a lot of losses associated with these kinds of chronic conditions. Loss of job, loss of friends, sometimes loss of primary partner, loss of sense of self, loss of being able to live the role that you've always lived, and an alienation with self, sometimes even a loss of the relationship with the body. Lots of losses. So that one takes time to work through and uncover as well. Certainly reducing stressors and certainly improving general health. I do tend to recommend some kind of anti-inflammatory diet just to really help the body along while we're doing this kind of work. Okay, let's just see if there's a couple of questions here. Your slide says, okay, I have a lot of neuropathic muscular bone pain from trauma. Could EMDR help with this? I think so, because EMDR helps to neutralize and calm the nervous system as much as that part can. It certainly couldn't hurt, right? Because stress increases subjective experiences of pain. What is EMDR? Oh, that's a good question. I'll just quickly say EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. Now, it was called eye movement back in the day because that was how we all did this, and the eyes go back and forth. Now, the reason for that is because when the eyes go back and forth, it produces an automatic calming sensation in the body. So when a person is doing any rhythmic bilateral stimulation, it could be walking, it could be running, It could be swinging on a hammock, the body calms. And the desensitizing is desensitizing the trauma trigger. Reprocessing is a cognitive piece that moves a person from the negative beliefs to the positive beliefs. It's very effective, it's very quick, and I do it all the time. Thank you for that question. Okay, next one. I wanted to talk a little bit about limbic system. So now we're going to get into what's happening in the brain. I'm not going to dwell here too much because we want to get onto the exercises. But I like the limbic system theory because it really does explain why this dysregulation happens in so many systems of the body. Because the limbic system is the control center for many systems of the body. Emotional regulation, sleep regulation, appetite, all kinds of things. And what the research has found, and I've just written a little bit down there, Rome 2000, they actually named this, what was happening, limbically augmented pain syndromes, but that didn't catch on. So now we call it, wind up of the nervous system, or being in survival mode, or central sensitization. A sensitized limbic system, that's trauma, stress, augments and actually amplifies pain perceptions. So when a limbic system is stressed out, it finds more stress. It creates more stress in a way. A vulnerable limbic system, which is in other words a vulnerable person, could be sensitized after years of emotional trauma, loss, or abuse, and that makes sense. So the limbic system is key, and emotional regulation is part of the limbic system. A couple of questions here. Can EMDR increase pain levels? Can EMDR help you if you have movement sensitivity and disequilibrium? Would sitting in a rocking chair be a form of EMDR? I find eye movement painful. Okay, we don't really do eye movement anymore. We do tapping mostly. I've got some little tappers, some little electrode things that a person holds and it goes tap, 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 tap. Rocking chair, not so much. That's an interesting question. Rocking chair goes back and forth. Side to side is really the most helpful. So I say a hammock, a nice slow walk even, or tapping yourself, tapping your feet, tapping your hands. Can EMDR increase pain levels? Yes, if not done well, if not done paced correctly. A person can go into their trauma and of course be all escalated and just say, okay, our session's over, bye-bye. So, that shouldn't happen. In order to do EMDR safely, there needs to be a calming image that is developed first so that a little bit is processed, then everything's calmed down. Then a little bit, then calm down. So the EMDR itself needs to be regulated so that a person's nervous system doesn't ever get beyond a threshold that it's going to increase pain. Can it help you if you have movement sensitivity and disequilibrium? I have done not quite EMDR. I also do clinical hypnosis, and I had someone who I've had lots of folks that have vertigo. Disequilibrium, I would think, is a vertiginous kind of condition, but also pain, what was it called? Not body dysmorphism, sorry, I'm forgetting. They were detached, they couldn't, proprioceptive issues. And I have found that a slow tap, it's sort of a modified EMDR helps really well with that. Okay, I'm just gonna sort of put those questions on hold. I do see that there's more, but I'm gonna move on to the next slide. Okay, now I'm not gonna go into all of this stuff about the limbic system, but I wanted to point out that there are neurotransmitters and minerals and chemicals that all have this cascade effect that affect the entire system. And I just highlighted the ones that you may have heard in your comings and goings, or if you're doing research, so that all of these are a part of a very complex system that when it's increased, it leads to inflammation, pain, depression, anxiety, dysregulation, like calcium flowing and all kinds of stuff happening that's changing the way the body is working. And I just wanted to sort of point that out. This is complex and needs to be changed over time. Okay. Here's a big one that I use, sensory motor overlay. So there is a concept out there that I've written in here called sensory motor amnesia. That's been around for a little while. And I've sort of piggybacked on that because of what I've seen with people. The term sensory motor amnesia is a term that describes, it's really fascinating. It's when we learn a new physical ability. So let's say we learn how to ride a bike. At first, we do this physical activity very, very consciously. Everything we do is conscious. So it's like, where do I put my hands? I'm going to put my hands here. And now I'm going to step over. Ooh, I'm falling. And I step over and sitting down. And you know, where do I put my feet? And the whole thing is so conscious. But when we start to get into it, when we start to feel the ease of it, then we say, oh, I get it. Now getting it is where, oh, I can let go of consciousness now. And my body can take over. Now this person here, Thomas Hanna, he called that sensory motor amnesia. That's just making it automatic so that we don't have to have conscious awareness of it. So what I started to see is that folks that have these physical difficulties like inflammation or pain or stiffness or all this kind of stuff, they get into this state in their bodies and they're not aware that they're in them. So I've got this example here. For example, in slouching, because I try not to slouch, but I do. In slouching, our nervous system learns to keep us in slouched posture by keeping certain muscles on the front contracted and muscles on the back released. And our proprioceptive, which is where I am in space, and our vestibular system, which is how I'm balanced, allowing us, learning how to allow us to get more and more comfortable in this unnatural position. So that slouching begins to feel normal and even good. And sitting up in our what used to be a normal position takes effort and feels uncomfortable. So what I call this is sort of a sensory motor overlay or overriding. Now, neuroplasticity sort of upgrades happen all the time. And it's like we've got software in our brain that's being continuously upgraded depending on how we're using our bodies and how we're interfacing with our environment. So if I'm slouching all the time, or if I'm just sitting all the time, my neuroplasticity is going to upgrade to say, this is my new normal. This, that feels like work. But if I hold this and I practice this, as you know, then I'm going to be able to sit up straight again. So the upgrade can be negative, is my point here. The upgrade can be towards something that maybe not great, because the brain is just doing what the brain does. So all the sensations that we have that are based on sensitization can be considered to be upgrades, overwritten, that keep us there, that the overwriting has not been removed to get us back to what our original was. And we have exercises for that. So I just wanted to sort of point that out. That's one of the concepts, thank you, one of the concepts that we're going to use in these exercises is how to rewrite what the body's doing. Okay, I'm just going to look at questions here real quick. I think there's a couple of new ones. Okay. Can central sleep apnea be a manifestation of central sensitization or sensitized limbic system? Rick, I might ask you about this one. I think that sleep apnea is a little bit different, but I'm not sure. Do you happen to know anything about that, Rick?
Yeah, completely different.
Yeah,
Different
that's what I was thinking. Okay, so the answer is no. Thank you for that question. What's the relationship between limbic and nervous system? Well, nervous system is an overall general term that applies to your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system, all the nerves going out into your fingers and your legs and your toes. The limbic system is one very specific part of the nervous system, if that makes sense. Okay, is there some sort of test to measure where your limbic system is at? I don't think that there is a specific limbic system test, but I think there are a lot of tests that measure certain aspects of the limbic system. It's quite a complex system, so one test might be too broad. But specific tests for sleep, for appetite, for emotional regulation, probably yes. Okay, and one more. What if you have completely repressed your emotions in a state of dissociation due to childhood emotional neglect? Well, then what that means in terms of psychological therapy is that a person needs to begin to tolerate the emotion that they're experiencing in their bodies first in order to not dissociate. Now, EMDR, I'll just say, works beautifully. I've been using it for about 20 years. The only time it didn't work, two people I can think of, only times it didn't work is when both people were dissociative. So you have to be present and experiencing your emotions in order to do the processing. So that's the first piece of work, is get present and get connected with the body, and a therapist will help you do that. Okay, and I'm going to just pause the questions and keep moving forward. Okay, I can't see the title here. I think this is motor cortex homunculus. I really like this one. I like the concept of a homunculus. I don't know if you've heard this one. It's a great word. A homunculus is a general term that refers to any human-shaped thing that is smaller than a human. So on our motor cortex at the top of our brain, there is a map of our entire body. And as you can see there, it goes all the way from, genitals, leg, hip, trunk, neck, arm, forearm, thumb, all the way through all the parts, both left and right. But if you notice, the homunculus parts are not relative in size to the parts in our body. And this is important. As you'll see, the biggest real estate allotted here is in the neck, the face, the lips, the mouth, the gums, the jaw, the tongue. All of this is given to that because this is very detailed. It needs to work very precisely. And there's a lot of sensory stuff going on here, as well as on this side, the hands. The hands get a lot of real estate on the brain because they have a lot of fine motor skill, a lot of sensory detail. So this is important for us here because what this says is that the map shrinks or grows depending on the usage of the part in question. Now, think about the parts of your own bodies that you focus on the most. Let's say I've got a neck issue. I've got chronic neck pain. I'm going to be thinking about my neck a lot. I'm going to be adjusting my neck a lot. I'm going to be tracking how my neck feels. I'm going to be basically aware of my neck a lot. And that means that the real estate in my brain is expanding to accommodate all of that information. So now the neck area in my homunculus, my motor cortex, is going to be a little bit bigger than it was before. And what happens when it gets bigger is there's more space for more information. So now my sensory experience of my neck is going to become more detailed. And it feeds into itself. So this is the basis for one of my exercises here is to start dealing with reclaiming some of the real estate for the rest of your body. Because over time, if I'm focusing on those parts of the body that are constantly causing problems, I'm simply growing the problem. And it applies to pain as well. There's an exercise about pain, which has to do with a similar thing, and it's coming up next. Okay, sorry for mismatch, join late. Will the slides be shared? Yes, the slides will be shared. Dissociation associated with the limbic system. I'm gonna say yes to that because when the limbic system, so dissociation is a coping strategy that basically detaches someone from consciousness about themselves. And a person dissociates when they become flooded and when they feel as though their coping mechanisms are not going to be adequate for the job. They just, Elvis leaves the building. So I would say yes, the limbic system is the place where the emotions are regulated. When the limbic system is overwhelmed, I would imagine that that leads to dissociation. However, please research that to get a really accurate response. That is just my hunch, okay? Can't read the highlights at all, unfortunately. It's okay, the highlights were just to show how complex the neurotransmitters are, but we're not going to dwell on that. Okay, highlights. Is this a functional disorder? Ah, so there is a difference between functional neuropathy, no, functional, Rick, I'm gapping out. I want to say neuropathy, but that's pain. Functional neurological disorder, FND, and central sensitization. Functional neurological disorder is a disorder of the nervous system, but its origins are a little bit different than sensitization. Rick, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that most patients with functional neurologic disorder are misdiagnosed
Yeah,
because physicians fall into what I call the Sherlock Holmes fallacy.
yes,
And some of you may know that Sherlock Holmes was the author was actually a doctor. And so the idea is that if you rule out every possible cause, no
yeah,
matter whatever is left, no matter how unlikely is the cause. Well, there's hubris in that it assumes that you know what all the possible causes are at
yes,
the get-go. And so physicians have a history of, if they can't identify it, what they call biologically, they call it functional, which means
mhm,
psychiatric. And so, for
mhm,
instance, MS was functional
yes,
until they made the MRI. So I think that functional neurological symptoms are very, very, very common in patients with ME, FM, central sensitization, and they represent part of the brain fog. They're part of the cognitive dysregulation and are not associated with brain damage.
mhm,
And so one of my students said it really well. He said, so you mean it's not a hardware problem, it's a software problem.
mm,
And so, yes, and remember that a lot of the words functional, like we used to have functional dyspepsia, but now the gastroenterologists, and we're having a presentation on this, have agreed that they should get rid of the word functional because
mhm,
most of the diseases that they called functional, which included IBS,
mhm,
central abdominal pain, or functional abdominal pain syndrome, functional dyspepsia, were all part of the gut-brain microbiome
mhm,
axis disorder. And
mhm.
so that I hope to see the word functional disappear in my lifetime. It's a catch-all that physicians automatically somehow become experts in psychiatry when it doesn't fit the tests. So
Absolutely.
I'll get
Glad
off
you, okay.
my crate, my bandwagon, but
No, we all agree with that bandwagon. Thank you. Okay, and there's two questions about fatigue here, which I think are good questions. Does all of this stuff apply to fatigue? Now, fatigue is one of those symptoms that kind of accompanies a lot of different conditions. But yes, this stuff can apply to fatigue. It just means focusing a little bit differently. So if it's not one specific body part, then it's focusing on a feeling. Anyway, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to stop myself because the exercises that we're going to be talking about will cover fatigue. Okay, thank you for those questions. Okay, next, exercise number one. Good, we're heading into the exercises. So in my experience here, by the time people come to see me, they have been through the gamut of the medical system. They have, of course, been searching. They've been trying to figure out. They've had symptoms for years, usually. They've been to doctors, they've been to specialists, they've tried exercises, they've read books, they've tracked, they've monitored, they've tried diets, they've done everything. By the time they get to me, they say, okay, what do I do? And this is going back to the doers, right? But their brains are so locked in to doing that they don't know how to relax anymore. So this exercise here is, I like to start this one off because it's so fundamental, it's so key to having a person's mind relax. And I don't mean meditation, and I don't mean mindfulness. Relaxing the mind means shifting the mind from being goal-directed, problem-solving, or task-oriented. So if we sit and think for a moment about how you're thinking just in your day-to-day, you probably move from task to task, and you say, I should, I have to, all the time. That's usually what people do. If I was to ask, when is the last time you relaxed? When is the last time your mind felt relaxed? Probably a long time. I see some, okay. So this exercise, the default neural network, is a system in the brain, and the brain works in systems always, it's never usually just one spot. The systems working together. This system lights up when the brain is at rest, and it doesn't light up any other time. And there's been some tentative research that says there might be a link between having a faulty default neural network and later on, neurological issues. Nothing quite conclusive yet, but what this exercise is learning how to light up that network. It's also called default mode, for those of you who are into the research. So what it is basically is you imagine yourself, this is how it feels. Imagine yourself on a vacation. Let's say you're at an all-inclusive so that you don't have anything to worry about. All of your needs are being taken care of. And if you're with people, all of their needs are being taken care of. You are relaxed. You are at ease. You are gazing somewhere up at the clouds or at the trees or at the ocean, depending where your vacation is. And your mind is free. It is free to wander. So it might look something like, that cloud, looks like a bunny rabbit. Reminds me of a rabbit that I had when I was a kid. Gosh, I haven't thought about that in a long time. So free association, just one thought to another. There's no should, there's no have to, there's no tasks, there's no goal, right? That produces a specific response in the body, which is a relaxation response. And I have found that when people come to me, they are so wound up and they're stuck that I will often say, let's just try this. Let's try it here, okay? All of us here. When I say, okay, go, I want everyone to try to just get into that relaxed space and just see how long you can maintain it. And the first time a task pops up, or a I should, or a problem solving, or an I have to, just send me a heart or a hand, okay? And we'll just see how long we can go. So I'm gonna get everyone to just relax and take a nice deep breath. Okay, now see if you can relax your mind, go on vacation a little bit. There we go. There's some signals. Lots more signals. Yes. Okay, lots of signals. So this tells us that the brain has rewired to be working all the time, working. And that even though you can find relaxation, it won't stay there because the brain's default says, no, I'm used to working, I've got to work. And this is all about neuroplasticity. Now, when I've done this, every single time I do this, it's usually 5 to 10 seconds is all somebody can last. Now, but what I have found in trying this a few times, even after 3 times of trying this, they can extend up to 30 seconds. It doesn't take long to get the brain to actually really relax. So I've written down a few suggestions there. Creativity is really a big part of this. Now, if most of you guys are sensitive people, and I would guess that you are, then you might lean towards the arts because many sensitive people lean towards the arts. If there is any creative leanings in you at all, I say try to encourage them. Now that means sitting with a pencil and paper and just doodling. You don't have a goal in mind, you're just doodling. Or you get one of those grown-up coloring books and you just color, right? Something that's going to just relax the mind and be not goal-oriented. And that means play as well. All children Play. And if you were a child who had the misfortune not to be able to play, then I'm very sorry. However, you can learn. You can always learn. And that means playing with your pets if you have them, playing with your kids if you have them, playing music if you have it, playing a game with a friend if you have it, just getting on the floor and doing something creative with someone that you know. Just playing blocks, playing dolls. I know it sounds silly, but it's trying to really enliven this muscle in the brain that hasn't been used for probably years. And it has beneficial cascade effects in the body. Daydreaming is another one. Daydreaming has been shown to be very good for the brain and for the body. So that means don't book a ticket and go somewhere. Simply stand at your window, look out at something green and pleasant. Look at a tree, look at some grass, look at the sky perhaps, and just let the mind go for as long as you can, for as many times a day as you feel like it. So now I want to talk about meditation and mindfulness. Most people do try those, and those are excellent things, and the research says those are really excellent and beneficial. But for our purpose, I want to think about meditation and mindfulness as work because they are goal-oriented. I need to blank my mind. I need to think about one thing. I need to focus on this word. I need to focus on the carrot that I'm peeling and notice as many things as I can about the carrot. It's very goal and task oriented. So that's not what we're talking about. We're simply talking about relaxing and stopping the work. Okay, couple of questions. There's lots of questions here. I'll just get to as many as I can. Okay, posture, good. Work, excellent. Hitting a ceiling with posture. Okay, these exercises will help. My mind wandering and ruminating is associated with unhappiness. Okay. Is it a good idea to indulge in default mode? Isn't it already overactive in many people? Okay, I think that's a good thing. So the word that we use for thinking and ruminating about negative emotion, the technical word is neurotic, only because it describes the negative piece. What we're trying to do, and I'm going to show you this thing here. Okay. This is kind of what we're going for here. We've got all the negative over here. I'll just get rid of that. All the negative over here, all the things I have to do, all the pain I have, all the tracking and the appointments. And then I've also got to take care of my kids and I got to try to do part-time job because I got to pay my bills. All of this stuff is exhausting and it's going to burn out the mind. What we want to get to is over here. She's not really thinking about much. And the stuff she's thinking about is neutral. So what I say sort of cognitively, if we want to make a cognitive shift from negative to positive, that's too big of a leap. I always say go negative to neutral first. So all it means for you, if you've got lots of negative ruminations, is just let the mind be neutral. Now, when you go to a negative rumination, there's a trick here. I want you to take that negative thought, put it in a cloud, and let the cloud float away. Now, the reason for that is because it sets the tone of how we want to deal with ourselves. It's non-judgmental, it's not critical, it's not shaming, there's no pressure to it. You just say, oh, there's the negative, put it away, let it float away. Now get to something neutral, which is, I see that flower pot out there, and I notice that my plants are all dead from the winter, and I think I kind of like to work on that. I like gardening, and so neutral stuff, just wandering. Negative thinking is a piece of work. Work is a four-letter word here. It is a shift to make that is an important shift. I would suggest that you get some support with that, like a therapist, right? To help you come up with some cognitive strategies to relax you and to make that shift from negative to neutral and then neutral to positive. Good question. Okay, a couple more and then we'll continue on. Can low back pain, injury / trauma, disc bulging, and severe chronic pain lead to pain central sensitization? Absolutely. Pain does lead to sensitization. I often make a difference here between acute pain and chronic pain. If you have acute pain, you have something mechanical happening in your body that is presently causing you pain, and that needs to be addressed. That is not chronic pain. Chronic pain is there is no mechanical issue causing pain, and yet pain persists. So that is sensitization. Pain of any kind can promote sensitization, which is why it's important to manage your pain. A lot of folks say, oh, I don't want to take medication because, you know, medication's bad and I'll just tough it out. And I say, no, 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 no. Take your pain meds as prescribed, because we want to reduce the stress on the body. We want to prevent sensitization. So deal with the disc bulging in an acute sense and manage your pain for sure. Okay, thank you for the heart, Patricia. I'm thinking that with emails and work coming home, more people are getting stuck in the go-go mode, especially if they work from home. Maybe need to segregate work and relaxation spaces. Absolutely. Those are making a space that a person can relax and let go of stress and pressure is another really important one. Okay, next one. This is a good exercise, the binocular exercise. Now, those of you with fatigue are going to need to be a bit creative here, okay? The binocular exercise is looking at the body in a specific way in relation to that mind map that we had, the homunculus. So here's what we do. We want to expand the real estate for the good feeling stuff, the normal, non-problematic part of the body. We want to shrink the real estate for the problematic stuff, and that starts to regulate what's going on. So it's like we're looking through binoculars. We are looking at, we'll start with our toes. Toes tend to be a fairly safe place to start. If your toes bother you, then maybe start with fingertips or ears or something different. But we'll start at the toes. So let's say we're looking through binoculars at our toes, and we're going to notice. So let's all do this together here. We're just going to notice the toes. How do they feel? Are they warm? Are they cool? Are they moist? Are they dry? Are they comfortable? Is there pressure on them anywhere? Can we feel fabric? Can they touch each other? How does that feel? Where are they in space? Can we feel that they're connected to the body? How are they connected to the body? That's a lot of sensory information that we don't usually ever think about with the toes. Now, while we are doing that, the toe real estate is lighting up. And neuroplastically, the brain is getting ready to say, oh, are we on toes now? Okay, let's do toes. So we do the toes, looking through the binoculars to enlarge. We carry on, we do the foot, asking all the questions. We do the ankles, we do the calves, we do the shins, we do the knees. We work our way up, and if we get to a problematic zone, we switch the binoculars and we reduce the vision. We just gloss over. We say, oh, those the hips. That's okay. I'll just whatever. We don't dwell in the problematic place. Then we get to an okay place again. We shift the binoculars and we carry on. We're noticing all the sensations, and we just keep turning, enhancing, decreasing, enhancing, decreasing all the way up. And if you do that, it takes a time, right? Because you're really slowing down and going through the body. But what we're focusing on is the good, normal, non-problematic stuff. And we're defocusing on all of the problematic stuff. And we're helping our neuroplasticity that way. I'm going to take a couple of questions, maybe about this. I think I might be behind a little bit. If I don't get to your question, there will probably be time at the end that I can get to it again. Okay. I'm an artist, and what you are telling me is happening to me when I do art. Good. Okay. How about singing? Singing is beautiful. Singing is beautiful. It oxygenates the body. It relieves stress and tension. Absolutely, sing your heart out. What if it's hard to focus on anything but pain when you have a lot of it? Okay, then that's the time for pain management rather than the neuroplastic exercises. You must be able to focus. If your pain is so bad that you can't focus, then you're going to need some help, right? You're going to need to do the pain management techniques that you've been taught, which is relaxation, breathing, maybe ice, maybe cold, maybe take your pain meds, maybe call a friend, do the stuff that you know helps you. These neuroplastic exercises are more to be done when it feels manageable to do it. We don't want to pile on if you're already in pain, right? Just be kind and deal with your pain and get yourself grounded again, stabilized again. How about crochet, knitting, quilting? Yes, yes, and yes. If you can do those things, absolutely do them. If they soothe you and calm you down, absolutely do them. They're good for neuroplasticity, learning anything new. If you're not a knitter, learn knitting. If you're not a quilter, learn quilting, because anything new really spurs the brain to grow more synaptic connections. So while you're doing these kinds of exercises, you could be learning Spanish. And then it will help all of these exercises. You might even learn how to do them in Spanish. Okay, are puzzles too task-oriented? That's a good question. I love doing puzzles. That depends. I'm going to say that's a personal one. Experiment. If you're doing a puzzle and you feel relaxed and your mind is wandering, good. If you're doing a puzzle and you're saying, where is that damn piece, and I got to find it, why can't I, and I'm never good at anything, then maybe not puzzles, right? It needs to be, I'm getting lots of, okay. It needs to be pleasant. It needs to be calming, right? So use your judgment and be kind to yourself. Okay, I'm going to do one more. I've been frustrated with drawing, writing, because the perfectionist in me can't shut up. How do I get back into the flow? Excellent question. Perfectionism is a big obstacle. Perfectionism is an obstacle to happiness. Perfectionism is all about, I'm not good enough. It's not good enough. And it's very black and white. So what I say to people who struggle with perfectionism is embrace the gray. There is no black and white in life. There is only gray. And in the gray, there is relief. There is humanity and humanism. There is ease, because it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. And in fact, I was friends with an artist for many years, and what he used to do, he used to do beautiful paintings, and then he'd take some random color on his brush and he'd go right on the painting, and it would, mortify me every time. He'd go, no, there is no such thing as perfection, and you've got to embrace that. Now it's done. So embrace the mistakes. Let yourself make mistakes. Feel the humanity in the mistakes. Feel the learning in the mistakes. And if you think about what evolution is, evolution, the reason we're here, is a series of mistakes. Some creature randomly, develops a whole new way of doing something, a whole new way of being, and it works, and they carry on. Embrace the mistakes. Okay, next one, exercise number 3, landmarking with vocabulary. Okay, this one is important. I often tell my clients, when they're describing to me how they feel, I say, don't use the P word. Don't say pain, because pain has a specific meaning in the body. Pain is a last resort. It means alarm, alarm, alarm. There is something wrong. There is some tissue damage happening here. You must attend to it. Now, when it comes to sensitization or chronic conditions, there is no tissue damage. There is inflammation. There is dysregulation. But there's no, as I say, there's no mechanical issue like with acute pain. So in order to calm the brain down, calm the whole system down, we need to just look at these sensations differently. So there's 2 aspects to this. The first is naming what's actually happening in your body using words other than the P word. Really getting specific about it. Now, I've done this with my own pain. Everybody has pain. When I've had pain, I have sat and said, what's really happening here? And you can actually sort of start to visualize it as this is electrical sensations, messaging going throughout my body. And I don't need to worry about this. It's just messages. But you can also say, just use different vocabulary. It feels tight. It feels hot. It feels tingly. It feels electric, buzzing, throbbing, achy. There's all kinds of words. Angry, red, so using descriptive words just takes it that shade further away from alarm and pain. So that's one aspect of landmarking with vocabulary. The other is, I will say to you guys, pick a part of your body that feels okay right now. Maybe it's the back of your right ear. Maybe it's the crook of your left elbow. Maybe it's behind your left knee. Pick a part of your body that is not having an issue. And see if you can come up with 3 words to describe that feeling. Let me just see if there's, you can chat, you can write it down. I'll go to the very end. Okay. Most people say, when I ask them that, they say fine, normal, and that's it. They can't get anything else because we don't pay attention to how whoops, sorry, I'll go back. Back. We don't pay attention to how normal feels. Free, easy. Oh, good. You guys are good. Soft is one. Warm. Pliable. I like that. Free. Easy. Love it. So my earlobes feel cute. Thank you. So some of the words that I sort of encourage to use. So there's calm, quiet, soft is one that we said. Easy is another one. Open. Grounded. Smooth is one that a lot of people like. Smooth. So as we say these words, just notice how your body starts to feel. Smooth. Soft. Open. Easy. Quiet. Grounded. It makes a difference. I feel a little bit better. I feel a little bit calmer just saying those words. So landmarking with vocabulary means starting to have the mind, the brain, notice things other than the pain. Because we get locked in to this working mode, tracking pain. I'm a person with pain. I'm a person with sensitivities. I'm a person with, and I'll talk about that next time, this identity that a person ends up getting entrenched into. So as you notice, more of the softer, gentler feelings of open, clean is another one that people have used. Buttery, I have heard. Sweet, I have heard. Lots of words that we simply don't associate with our bodies. So start to associate it. It makes a difference. Okay, next one. Here's a big one that I use. This one takes a little bit of practice. This is a sensory overlay. That's what I call this, or sensory revision. It has to do with the overriding that we talked about earlier. Revising the version of your perception in your brain to be healthy and well, rather than to be alarmed and ill. And we draw from memory what that feels like. So it's a sensory memory that we are activating, and then we sort of invite it or we overlay it into our body now. And I can do this with structured journaling, but I'll just give you an example right now. So see if you can follow along. For example, if we take the word, so sometimes I've done this with I am powerful, or I am strong, or I am free, I am loved. Let's do free. Free is a nice one. Think about the last time that you felt free. And maybe you have to go back a bit. Maybe you have to go back to childhood. That's okay, as long as you can go back somewhere. Maybe you need to think about being with someone who was free, or being with a pet, or being alone in the woods or something. It doesn't matter what it is, just see if you can find free. Now, I'll give you an example. I asked someone this, and she said she remembers when she was a child turning cartwheels in the park. And that was a free feeling for her. And I said, okay. So in this feeling, if you can find it, ask yourself, how does my body feel when I'm feeling free? What is the actual physical sensation? And now our vocabulary actually comes into use. The physical sensations of free. So here we get, if you can remember being a child who's, doing what children do, for this instant, for this example, the client who said turning cartwheels in the park. It could be, I feel strong, I feel spontaneous, I feel flexible, limber. For me, I go to, I feel aligned, like I feel like my body is not straining. Now, what would that be? We don't have a not word, we want to have a word. So easy, natural, I think would be the word. So if we can remember what it feels like and sit with that feeling, we're actually reminding the brain of what our well body feels like, because we get very entrenched in an illness body. Gentle, content, I'm reading some of the words here, flowing, love that, flowing, because there is such energy flow and there's such circulation. Buoyant, beautiful, strong, powerful, playful, pleasant, smooth, still. Oh, so many beautiful words, you guys. Relaxed, soft, supported in the shoulders. Absolutely. That's how I feel too. I feel like, oh, suddenly I'm supported, I'm aligned. Now we forget what that feels like being in this illness body for so long. So structured journaling is a nice place to do this if you are a journaler. If you're not, then simply just imagine it and invite it basically into your mind and feel the feelings. What does flowing feel like? If you like journaling, then the structured journaling is, I feel, well, sorry, I'm getting two things in my head at the same time. Structured journaling is when I felt free as a kid, my body felt, and then you start to describe how the body feels. When I was doing cartwheels, I could feel the grass on my hands. I could feel the weight tumbling over. I felt balanced. I felt the thrill of my feet going over my head. I felt nimble, and just describe as much as you can, because when you're describing it, you're wearing it in your brain. And this is like, it's what athletes do when they're competitive athletes. They can't be training their bodies all the time. They need their bodies to rest. But when their bodies are resting, they're visualizing, because it activates the body in the same way that doing it with your body does. So activate your wellness body by going through memories of strength and freedom and easiness and flexibility and joy. Joy is a beautiful one. And relaxation. Anything that you feel like you want to feel, it's all here. As long as you have felt it at least one time in your life, it's here and you can draw on it. Okay, let's see. Exercise 5, we'll do this quick so that we have some time for questions. I love this, and I've had a lot of feedback from clients saying this made a huge difference. So this has to do with the pleasure centers of the brain. Now, I said earlier that by the time you come to see a therapist about this stuff, you've been working hard to figure this stuff out. most people say, I can't even remember the last time I felt joy or happiness. So, which means the pleasure and reward center of the brain is starting to atrophy. And the other parts of the brain that are working hard, are taking center stage. So what we want to do is we want to reboot the pleasure centers. And what we do is we simply savor. Now, savoring is easy. Notice and enhance pleasurable experiences. I have a kitten. I happen to have a kitten right now. And it is so pleasurable watching her be a silly little kitten. I just watch her and I laugh. So if I was really focusing, I would take a moment and really savor that feeling. Let it flow through the body, enhance it, steep in it to get that savoring effect. Anything, when the clouds part and a sun ray comes down, savor. The first sip of coffee in the morning, the smell of the coffee brewing. If you walk into a bakery, the smell, if, going for a walk and seeing the flowers coming up, anything out there that you think, oh, that's nice. Stop, notice. Okay, yeah, that's actually really nice. Breathe a little bit. This exercise is so simple, but so many people have said what a huge difference it's made, because it changes how the brain works. Now the pleasure centers come back online. Now you can remember joy. You can remember happiness. And laughter daily is a given. Laughter is a good medicine. If you haven't laughed for a very long time, you deserve a good laugh. When I have done research groups and sensitization groups, I always include jokes. One of the first things I say is a joke. And people go, okay. And they kind of groan, oh, it's a joke. And then I get the participants to start bringing their own jokes. And pretty soon people are laughing, but it's almost like they're out of practice at first and they can't sort of get up a good head of laughter. After a while, everybody's laughing and it feels good. So savoring is big. Okay. I'm aware that we've got lots of questions. That's the conclusion for what I have to share with you. And I've just gone over the highlights here. The treatment is multifaceted because the cause is multifaceted. The limbic system is a key player here, and that's all about regulation. The rules of neuroplasticity work in your favor to reduce sensitization. Neuroplastic exercises focus on reminding the brain of what well feels like, changing the real estate devoted to illness and wellness, guiding the brain into really non-task oriented relaxation, and enhancing the reward and pleasure centers of the brain. So next time, I'm going to go into a little bit more psychological exercises. Rather than neuroplastic, there's rebalancing the mind-body relationship is fascinating. Regulating in different ways, soothing, neutralizing trauma. We'll talk a little bit about that, maybe a little bit more about EMDR, and continuing the journey to rewrite neuroplasticity a bit towards wellness and away from illness. Okay. And this is, I do have references here, and you'll get that in the package that you get. And this is me. So I'm going to leave it there so that you can get that information if you want it. And I'm going to go back to some questions here. Just going to check, okay, the time. We got 15 minutes. That's good. Let me see. I'm going to go back up because I think I missed some. Singing, crochet, frustrated with drawing. I can't play unstructured, even with my own children, due to trauma. I've done several series of EMDR, DBT, CBT, hypnotherapy, still not accessible. I do structured play like board games. Okay, I can understand that. Sometimes when a person has been through a lot that prevents them from more of the average type of play, they just don't develop the knowledge of what average play is. So what I say is start small, just like you would with a very tiny person. You don't say, hey, come and play Monopoly with me to a 2-year-old. You don't say, hey, let's dress up like clowns to a 1-year-old. you just start very slowly. Oops, what's happening there? Okay, so start slowly as though you're offering a very basic kind of play to a very small person. So you just sort of hold the doll up and go do. And what does the doll say now? And then you simply say the first thing that comes to your mind. Now, if the mind is blocked, then you sit and relax. What I tend to say, because I work with a lot of people with traumatic brain injury as well, and I do cognitive rehabilitation. And so one of the sort of the metaphors that I use is like, don't push your brain to do anything. Don't push to make it play. Don't push to make it relaxed. Don't push to get any particular effect out of it that you want. Relax into it as though you are letting a balloon rise up through deep water. The balloon is your ability to do whatever it is you want to do. So if you relax, the ability will rise to the surface a little bit more. So I would encourage you to just start very, very basic. Do play, don't abandon play, but just say, and I want to put this block there. And that's it. I chose where I wanted that block to go. That's all play is. Because you don't say, where does my brain want the block to be? You say, what do I feel like I want the block? Where do I feel like I want the block to be? And it's that feel like, that's the way, that's the play. Good question. Okay, difference between daydreaming and maladaptive daydreaming. As I mentioned before, the negative and letting it float away. Is there any benefit to light and sound machines, mind machines, or gimmicky? I'm not really a gimmick person. I tend to be fairly straightforward and natural. I mean, I do like the tappers for EMDR. Red light therapy, I think, is a good thing. But the gimmicks, no. I think go for a walk, be in nature, talk to your friends, laugh, focus on the positive. These are all really natural and common sense ways of doing things. All of this neuroplastic stuff is fairly common sense. It's just that we understand it a little bit more now. So I'm not big on the gimmicks. That's the answer to that one. I used to do physical exercise or activities in my form of play, but now with my illness, I can no longer do such things. It's difficult to switch to arts, focus, creative exercises. Can other examples be provided that are more in line with those who are more physically active? Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I hear this a fair bit, that people who were formerly very physically active, very in their bodies, very healthy, and then they get this condition, and their main source of outlet or even connection with self is no longer accessible to them. And it's quite a grief, and it can be quite frustrating. I would say, now something that we talk about in the CCDP was understanding what the basic core values were for you of that exercise. So for example, if I used to go hiking all the time and I really loved it and that was my main thing, and then I got this condition and now I can't do it anymore, I would say, what was it about hiking that I loved? Or what was it about your physical exercise that you loved, Cynthia? Hiking for example, I loved being in nature. I loved being social with the people that I hiked with, and I loved feeling strong and capable. So we take those three values, nature, socializing, and strength. We say, how can I live those three values in a different way now? So how can you live your need for physical activity in a different way now? If your love for physical activity was because it made you feel strong, maybe it made you feel powerful, and maybe it got you outdoors. So what other things can you do that are calibrated to what you're physically capable of doing? So it means being creative. There's also other forms of activity. One that I really love, that I do myself and that I promote to anyone who's able, is Qigong. So that one I love. I've been doing it for years because it is meditational movement. It's called the movement of meditation or the meditation of movement. And so it creates a lot of heat. I get a good workout, but I don't go anywhere. I stand in my living room, I look at a video, and I just move, and it's very calming, it's very invigorating, and you feel it. There, I will mention the Qigong video maker that I prefer. His name is Lee Holden, and I think he's American. I think a lot of his videos are made in California. He has these beautiful natural backdrops to his videos. He's got lots that are free on YouTube, but he's also got some paid ones that I think you can get on Amazon even. So I do recommend finding a physical activity that you can tolerate as much as possible. How do you stay informed about world events and not ruminate? Excellent. I have a good friend who is a very sensitive person, and she says to me, oh, I can't do the news anymore. I'm so upset about what I'm hearing. I don't watch the news. I listen to the news on the CBC because I find watching the news is too much. And I only listen maybe once a day, just so that I'm apprised of what's happening in the world. You must be your best advocate. If you feel disturbed by what you're hearing on the news, don't listen. Get your news somewhere else. Read it in the paper, or just ask people, so what's going on in the world? And they'll tell you their version. Or if it really disturbs you because your sensitivity is heightened, just don't worry about it. Let the world go a little bit until you start to feel healthy and well and grounded, and then you can pick it up again. Okay, you're very welcome. Do you consider neuroplasticity work as a cure or a way to find remission, or more of a tool for making these conditions more bearable? I would say no one says cure, right? No one says cure, because everyone is different. I have worked with people who have been significantly in remission, who have been able to resume work and resume school and, all that kind of stuff. I've worked with people who reach out to me and say, I feel normal. So, but we never say they're cured, because you don't know. If you get a cold, maybe it happens again. If you are very stressed, if you experience another loss, maybe this is going to be the kryptonite, right? Maybe you just have a body that's very sensitive and you have a dysregulatory tendency. So remission and management, absolutely. I tend to say to people, they say, well, but how much am I going to get better? And they really want numbers. And I say, well, okay, don't shoot for 100%. Shoot for 80% at the most. 80% is good. You can have a life, you can manage, things are good at 80%, and everyone's kind of got something that they struggle with, 20%. So that's a good question, thank you. Good. Long question. Okay, not sure if I can do the long question. Let me see. Pilates class, pain clinic, supposed to breathe in, thinking of the muscles around our lungs. After me, it's easier to connect with those muscles. Okay, now I experience weakness in my thigh muscles, or I stumble, create more connections between my brain and those muscles to improve the weaknesses. Yes, that's how neuroplasticity works. So what she's asking is, if I focus on that part of my body, can I create more connections? Absolutely. So, and that's the basis of physiotherapy, is you're doing exercises mindfully to try to build up strength and to try to maybe move differently and take stress off some places and build up others. So now I mentioned earlier, I had a client who had proprioceptive difficulties, which means she couldn't locate her limbs in space. So what we started to do neuroplastically was keep moving and put things in her hands that she can manipulate like this to give her sensory information while she's moving in space. And that helped her to build up the connections to where her body was. So yes, neuroplasticity is the way to go. Is it appropriate for someone who's already hyper-focused on body sensations? That's a good question. A lot of times we say defocus on the body, which is why we're kind of trying to shift the focus on the positive stuff. So in the literature about highly sensitive people, it says that one theory for why sensitive people develop these kinds of things more than non-sensitive or averagely sensitive people is because we focus on our bodies more. We are in tune with our bodies more. We feel the little tiny things more, as opposed to others who just don't even register them. So this is where it takes a nuance. There's a sweet spot that we want to get to between focusing on what's happening in the body to know what's going on and letting go and ignoring and distracting and doing all of that stuff. Now, there is merit to distraction. Distraction works, but pain science tells us we also need to sit with and actually change. So the sweet spot here is focusing on the body differently, not negatively, not ruminating on the challenges, the pain, the difficulty, starting to notice other aspects of the body, like in the exercises that we did. Okay, if we have FM and widespread pain, the binocular exercise mainly focus on very few areas, correct? Yes, that's correct. Not every exercise may work for every person. If the binocular exercise feels problematic, just don't do it. That's just, you know your body best. If it feels like you're really struggling to find an area that feels good, don't bother. Just do the ones that actually feel accessible to you, okay? Because we want to decrease the amount of work that you're doing, not pile on to the work that you're doing, okay? Can you elaborate on what you mean by enhancing and reducing? I think that was in relation to enhancing real estate and reducing real estate, because we were doing the binocular exercise around that time. So that means sort of waking up the parts of the body that are outside of our consciousness, like our toes, and reducing the awareness of the parts of our body that are problematic because there's too much awareness on them already. So enhancing the good stuff, growing real estate, reducing the bad stuff, shrinking real estate. Okay. And my experience is that it's better to accept and welcome the problematic area before moving on rather than ignoring it entirely. Yes. And that certainly is an approach. High hips, I hear you. Absolutely. And so there was a pain scientist from Australia that I really liked. He was a funny guy. Lorimer Moseley was his name. He's been around for a while. And he basically said that we need to address the pain in some way, rather than it just ignoring it. And I tend to sort of use this metaphor of a barking dog. If a dog is barking, 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 we're not going to just ignore the dog because it's not going to stop barking. We have to address the dog, but we're not going to say, oh my God, not you again. Here we go again. When are you ever going to stop barking? Because that's not going to stop the dog barking. What we need to do is say, come here, and shh, it's okay. And soothe the dog. So that's the change. I'll talk about that in July. That's the change in addressing the pain. We need to find a way to address it that actually addresses it positively. Now, I see the time. I'm going to just scoot down to the end here because this is just to get a different flavor of question. Lots of words. Okay. I don't know if this counts as sensory overlay revision, but I happen to be working on a photo book of my past 10 years as an anniversary gift. Seeing all these photos at once really did something to how I have been feeling. Absolutely. That is an excellent example of an organic, spontaneous overlay. You remembered who you were in those pictures, and it brought feelings to your body, and it changed how you felt. Thank you for sharing that. I see Rick is back.
Thanks, Megan.
Okay.
So you can see how much information there was
Yes.
and why Megan decided to add a second presentation. And I
Yes.
think we've picked a date in July.
July, that's right. I don't have it on me, but yes,
Yeah,
it's in July.
if you want to know, you can have a look at our website. the schedule for the special lectures is usually 6 months ahead, so you can kind of get an idea. You'll get an invitation 2 weeks before. But thank you so much, Megan. I learned a ton.
Oh,
And I
good.
look forward to your second presentation.
Great.
Take
Thank you,
care,
Rick.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.